after reading the book, No Bootstraps When You Were Barefoot, one big takeaway, and just from hearing you riff off about your story and the journey to Dragon's Den, Wes, is that you have a powerful mindset and you're extremely observant. Every little thing that you experienced in life was a lesson. And I think that was what I took away from the book is you were abused. So what's the lesson here? You got to witness and observe your grandmother taking care of 10 dependents, 10 under their zinc roof. What was the takeaway? Everything was a takeaway for you. And that is, I think, a huge raw skill set that has propelled you in your career, something I think everybody can take away from this. But one thing I want to talk about in particular is the 2 years of abuse from your mother. When by all stretches of the imagination, that's supposed to leave marks and verbatim in your book, dark wells of pain to slip into. But you made a conscious effort to not be defined by that. So how did you develop this EI or this emotional intelligence over time? Like it seemed like you had it when you came out of the womb. You had this EQ. Was this like a nature versus nurture? Can you just walk us through where you developed this?
First of all, great question and great points as well. Whenever we see people behave in certain way in society, there's two things that we can take from that. One, psychologist would look at their behavior and go, it's because of what happened to them, why they're behaving that way. We see people committing criminal activities. People abuse their children. They go, he was abused. That's why he's doing it. His father was a thief. That's why he's a thief. But I don't subscribe to that, because there's people in your life that aren't thieves, that didn't abuse you. And you can either look at the people who did the bad things to you and emulate them, or you look at the people who did good things to you and emulate them. I was very grateful that my grandmother was, my mother abandoned me when I was 18 months old, and my grandmother took me in at that time. I spent 11 years with that woman, seeing the sacrifices, seeing the industriousness, seeing how she was treating me as a child. And I was not going to let 2 years of abuse by my mother turn me into this person who would become an abuser. I wanted to emulate the kindness that I saw from my grandmother. And that's why I give her so much credit to this day, because the hard work that I saw when this woman was chopping sugarcane, and she took us to the banana plantation to work with her because we weren't at the age where we could go to school. When I was piling up coconut with her, when she came home at 6 o'clock in the evening and it's dark and she had to make dinner for us, and then she had to make sure that we go to the river to get water so she can wash her uniform and iron them and get them ready for the next day. That's the stuff that I saw for 11 years of my life. And I'm like, this woman died in poverty. She died working like a slave, literally. And I go, I need to honor that somehow. And I need to honor that with my own life and the way that I live my life. So all the things that I saw that happened in a negative way to me that put so much stress on this poor woman, I go, I'm not going to put that stress on anybody else. So when as you mentioned, 10 grandkids that she was raising at the time, well, I'm not going to have kids out of wedlock and leave them for somebody else to look after. I'm going to make sure that I have one woman, going to marry her if I could, going to have all my kids with her, and I'm going to stay with her as long as I possibly can. Okay. So those kids won't be a burden to somebody else. The second thing I'm going to make sure is that when I get married to that woman, because my stepfather used to beat my mom to no end. And as a child, I was so helpless at 11, 12 years old, so helpless. I couldn't do anything about it. I said, I'll never put somebody else through that trauma. I won't put my kids through it, and I won't put another human being through it. So I'll never abuse the person that I love, that I live with. And because I was abused by my mother, because she was being abused by somebody else, I said, I'm not going to repeat that cycle by abusing my kids. So all the things that I saw that was negative in my life, I said, I am going to make sure that I never repeat that cycle, and it ends with me. My wife and I have been married for 31 years now. We have 5 children together. And I just emulate what I saw in my grandmother. You see, my grandfather used to be an alcoholic. He died in the early 1970s. And because he was an alcoholic, and he wasn't an abusive alcoholic, he was just an alcoholic. My grandmother kicked him out. Think about how strong you have to be in the 70s in rural Jamaica with all those grandkids, and you kick this man out of the house who is a breadwinner in the house. And you go, you're not going to be around my grandkids because you're a bad influence. And she never took on another man until the day she died at 97 years old. Not another man was in that house. Man, how could I have an example like that? Forget about money and wealth and career. How could I have an example like that and fail as a moral human being? How could I? So I had the best role model to show me what life should be like, no matter how much hardship is thrown your way. Never be resentful, but try to be as kind as you possibly can, because life is hard. And you don't make it harder by how you deal with all the struggles that come in front of you. And that's what my grandmother taught me. And she died in poverty. And I'm forever grateful for the lessons that she didn't sit me down and teach me those lessons, but she taught me those lessons by her example. And that's the best way to teach.